So, remember when we were told that Trump barely knew Jeffrey Epstein? That they were just casual acquaintances at Mar-a-Lago? Yeah, about that. New emails just dropped. And folks, they're something else. I'm talking about correspondence between Epstein and his partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell. I'm talking about discussions of leverage, political currency, and what Epstein called the dog that hasn't barked. And before you click away thinking this is just another political hit piece, I want you to ask yourself one question. Why is the White House fighting so hard to keep these files buried? Because here's the thing. We need to forget who's on the left or right and focus on what powerful people knew, when they knew it, and why we're only finding out now. So buckle up. We're going deep on this one.
Let me set the scene for you. It's November 2024, and the House Oversight Committee just released 23,000 documents from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. 23,000. And buried in there are emails that paint a very different picture than what we've been told. Now, I know what some of you were thinking. Here we go again with the Epstein conspiracy theories. But hold on. These aren't theories. These are Epstein's own words, in his own emails, to people who were in his inner circle. And here's where it gets interesting. These emails span from 2011 to 2019. That's before Trump ran for president, during his campaign, and after he was already in office. So we're not talking about ancient history here. We're talking about a relationship that clearly lasted a lot longer than we were led to believe. The question isn't whether Trump knew Epstein. We know he did. The question is, what exactly did he know? And why has that story kept changing? Because remember, Trump himself said on the campaign trail that he supported releasing the Epstein files. But now that he's back in office, suddenly it's a hoax. Suddenly there's a lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal. Suddenly the White House is in full defensive mode. What changed?
Let's start with the most damning email. It's from 2011, and it's between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. You know, the woman currently serving 20 years for sex trafficking. Epstein writes, and I quote, "I want you to realize that that dog that hasn't barked is Trump. The victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned." Let that sink in for a second. The dog that hasn't barked. For those who don't know, that's a reference to a Sherlock Holmes story. It's about something suspicious that didn't happen. The dog that should have barked, but didn't. In other words, Epstein is saying Trump should have been mentioned in the investigations, but he wasn't. And then he says a victim, a trafficking victim, spent hours at his house with Trump. Hours. Not a brief hello at a party, not a handshake at a charity event. Hours. Maxwell's response? I have been thinking about that. Now, the White House came out swinging on this one. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the victim referenced was Virginia Giuffre, and that Giuffre herself said Trump wasn't involved in wrongdoing. She also said Trump kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago for being inappropriate with female employees. Okay, let's examine that. If Trump kicked Epstein out for being a creep, why is Epstein writing about victims spending hours with Trump at Epstein's house in 2011? The timeline here doesn't quite add up, does it? And here's another question. If this interaction was completely innocent, why would Epstein characterize Trump as the dog that hasn't barked? Why would that be noteworthy? Why would Maxwell respond that she'd been thinking about it? You don't talk like that about innocent encounters. You talk like that about leverage, about secrets, about information that could be valuable.
But wait, it gets worse. Fast forward to January 2019. Epstein is writing to author Michael Wolff. Yes, the guy who wrote Fire and Fury about the Trump White House. And Epstein says something that should make everyone's blood run cold. He writes, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never remember ever. Of course he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Read that again. He knew about the girls. And not just knew, Trump allegedly asked Ghislaine Maxwell to stop, which means he knew what was happening and his solution was to ask politely that they not do it around him. Think about what that means. If you see something horrific happening, something illegal, something that involves the exploitation of young women, you don't just ask someone to stop. You call the police. You report it. You blow the whistle. Unless you're worried about what might come out if you do. Now, I want to be fair here. These are Epstein's claims in an email. They're not verified testimony. They're not court documents. But they're also not random accusations from a tabloid. They're private correspondence between Epstein and someone he trusted, written years before anyone knew we'd be reading them. Why would Epstein lie to Michael Wolff in a private email? What would be the point? And here's what really bothers me. We've been told for years that Trump cut ties with Epstein because Epstein stole workers from Mar-a-Lago's spa. That was the official story. But if Epstein's telling Wolff that Trump knew about the girls and asked Ghislaine to stop, that's a completely different story, isn't it? That's not a business dispute. That's knowledge of criminal activity.
Now, let's talk about email 3. Because this one shows us how Epstein thought about his relationship with Trump December 2015. Trump is running for president, and Michael Wolff tells Epstein that CNN is planning to ask Trump about their relationship at an upcoming debate. Epstein's response? If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Let me repeat that. Epstein wanted to craft Trump's answer. Not just advise him, not just give him a heads up, craft his response. And Wolff's reply is even more revealing. He basically lays out a strategy where Epstein could gain valuable PR and political currency depending on what Trump says. He tells Epstein, you can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. This is leverage. This is blackmail material. This is Epstein literally discussing how he could either destroy Trump or save him, depending on what was politically advantageous. And the crazy thing? Trump wasn't asked about Epstein at that CNN debate. The question never came up. Was it because Epstein intervened? Did Trump give the right answer in private? We don't know. But what we do know is that Epstein clearly believed he had information that could damage Trump's campaign. Information valuable enough that he could trade it for political favors if needed. What was that information? If it was just, we were friends at parties, that wouldn't be leverage. Everyone already knew they'd been photographed together. So what else was there?
Here's where we are right now. The House Oversight Committee has released over 33,000 pages of documents related to Epstein. They've subpoenaed the Department of Justice. They've called for full transparency. And the Trump administration? They're calling it a hoax. They're suing journalists. They're fighting the release of more documents. Why? If Trump's relationship with Epstein was as innocent as we're told, why not release everything? Why not let the sunlight in? As they say, sunlight is the best disinfectant. A poll from September showed that over 3/4 of Americans think the Trump administration should release all of the Epstein files with victims' names redacted. 3/4. That's bipartisan support. Regular Americans want answers. But instead, we're getting stonewalling. We're getting lawsuits. We're getting press secretaries saying this is all a distraction from Trump's historic accomplishments. And look, I get it. Some of you watching this are Trump supporters. You voted for the guy. You believe in his policies. That's fine. But can we all agree that we deserve the truth about this? That victims of sex trafficking deserve the truth? This isn't about partisan politics. This is about whether powerful people get to operate by different rules. It's about whether justice applies equally, or whether having the right connections means you get a pass.
So where does this leave us? We have Epstein's own words saying a victim spent hours with Trump at his house. We have Epstein claiming Trump knew about the girls and asked Ghislaine to stop. We have Epstein discussing political leverage and crafting answers for Trump during his campaign. And we have an administration that promised transparency during the campaign, but is now fighting tooth and nail to keep these documents buried. The House Oversight Committee says they're going to keep pushing. Ranking member Robert Garcia says they will not stop until we get justice for the victims. But the real question is, will we let them? Will we demand answers? Or will we let this get memory hold like so many other scandals? Because here's the truth. This isn't going away. More documents are coming. More emails will be released. And eventually, the full story is going to come out. The only question is whether it happens now, when we can actually do something about it, or years from now, when it's too late to matter. I know where I stand. The victims deserve answers. The American people deserve the truth. And no one, I don't care if they're president or prince or billionaire, should be above accountability. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to see more coverage as this story develops, hit that subscribe button, because something tells me we're just getting started.